Hello, Forecaster here, and in this video we are going to go over the various editions of the Fantasy Grounds module generator for Dungeon Fog. And to give a little bit of a background, if you are new to this, previously to use this generator you had to either use the online version that you can see in front of you, but that is limited in several ways. If you wanted to use the full version, you had to download a Python script, and then you had to install Python on your system if you didn't already have it, and you had to run that script through the command line, which is not everybody's cup of tea. But now the application is available as an executable, and I've also introduced a graphical user interface, or GUI as it's commonly referred to. And that makes the application a lot more accessible. And in this video, I'm going to go over each edition of the program in 3 distinct chapters. The first chapter is going to cover the executable and the GUI version. The second chapter is going to cover the web generator. And the third chapter is going to cover the individual Python scripts and how to download and use them. And the reason I want to cover all of the editions is so that in case while the executable version is the preferred way to run the application, something might happen where that becomes unusable or inaccessible, or it might not simply work for someone and they still might wish to use the application. The web version of the generator is severely limited. As you can see, it only has 2 options, but it's quick and easy to use, and it doesn't require downloading anything. You can use it from anywhere you have internet access. It might be nice to use if you are somewhere else and you need a module quickly with minimal options, a better than nothing scenario. And the Python script might be a way for someone who can't use the executable for whatever reason to use the generator. Now, there are also a number of resources available. Here on the website, we have a link to the GitHub repository for this project, where you will also find the issue tracker for this application. If you have a GitHub account or some other way to log into GitHub, you can create tickets for bug reports or feature requests or questions and anything else related to this project. There's also a link to the Dungeon Fog website and the Dungeon Fog Discord, where you can find me and ask for help with this application. And there's also a link to the Fantasy Grounds website, because Fantasy Grounds is an integral part of using this. If you don't have Fantasy Grounds or have never used Fantasy Grounds before, you can download their demo version of Fantasy Grounds Unity, which lets you create a test campaign where you can try it out and test Fantasy Grounds, and you can load in modules. I believe you can load in modules. I know the test campaigns in the demo version don't save anything, but otherwise should work like the full premium version of the application. If we scroll down on the main page, we find some sections which you can expand, and they contain some information about each edition of the generator, as well as we have notes and known issues, which tell you about some things that are good to know and some limitations that may exist. And I'll update this as these as required. Also have a feedback section, which mentions the GitHub, the Discord server, and I also have an email address you can use that will reach me if the other options aren't viable for whatever reason. So with that, let's move into chapter 1. So the executable version of the generator, like I said, is the preferred version because it's the most accessible, that has all of the options available to it. So we're going to scroll down and go to the executable section. And here it says you can download the generator as an executable, which includes everything required to run it. And I'm going to open this link in a new tab. This will take us to the releases page on the GitHub repository. This is where you can find the executables. There's one for Linux and one for Windows. And we want the latest one, of course. So we want the top one that says latest release. And I'm going to left click on the Windows one, because that is what I need. I've created a folder in my C drive called DF2VTT. I'm going to put the executable in there. I've also made a map in Dungeon Fog, of course, that we are going to use to test out the application. So this is the map. It's pretty simple. It's a little humble house of some kind. Pretty tight living spaces. We have a bit of a kitchen. We have a living room type thing with a fireplace. We have an unlit bedroom other than this window. We have a bit of a lavatory with a bathtub in it. We also have a secret room here, which has a concealed door, as you can see, which is a little treasure room. And we have an empty shed outside. And on the second floor, we have a bit of some kind of storage room with a couple of bookshelves, not really much else in it. We have a door into a little storage room. And then we have another concealed door, which leads into an office of some sort with more bookshelves and a couple of desks. And then we also have a room that leads, or a door that leads into a room with a coffin in it. Looks like maybe a vampire lives here, or has lived here. Current residents might not know about these other parts of the building. And I've already exported these two floors as separate maps using the universal VTT export option. So if we go to the DF2VTT folder in the C drive, you can see the executable that I downloaded, and we can see the two map files. And I'm just going to double click on the executable, and I get this pop-up from Windows because it doesn't recognize this executable. I'm just going to click on more info and then select run anyway. And then I get this console window, which is going to pop up first. That is going to start up the application, and we get the interface window. And here I can enter a name for my module. I'm going to call it a module. It's going to appear nice and high in the module list in Fancy Grounds. I'm going to change the author to Forecaster. That's me. And then I'm going to click the Browse button. And it's going to start in the folder where the executable is. And I can select both of these files and click open. And it will add them to this text box. As you can see, we have ground floor and then we have upper floor. You could also type these in manually in this text field and separate them with a semicolon as it's done here, and as the text say here. You also don't need the full path if the files are in the same folder as the executable. If I just type the file names, and I can remove the rest of the path just to demonstrate that this works. It's going to do that. Still leave the semicolon between them. And if it just gets a file name, it will look for that file in the folder where the executable is. So you can just type in the file name manually if you want. I'm going to open up the more options panel, and I'm going to check portal refinement, because this map has a number of portals in it, and they aren't all doors. And I want to make sure that they are defined correctly. If you don't have enable portal refinement, all windows and open passages and hidden doors will just be normal doors. And especially when you have concealed doors, you probably want to use portal refinement to make sure that they are defined differently and aren't all doors. So I could also specify a grid color, but because I have a grid in Dungeon Fog, I don't need to make the grid visible in Fansgrounds. It's still going to set a grid on the map for token alignment and such movement, but the grid is going to be black and 100% transparent. Not going to explain the other options. You can hover over them to get an explanation of them if you want. I'm going to click generate, and this is going to start the process. And because I clicked portal refinement, I get a second window called query, or a third window, depending on how you look at it. And it says a total of 10 portals were found. Open the image generated in the application directory that ends with _portals.png. Each portal has been assigned a number placed next to each in the image. Assign each portal a type below. So I'm going to pin this window on top using display fusion, because that is nice and convenient. And if we look in the folder, we can see that there's indeed a PNG file that ends with _portals, and it's for the ground floor. I'm going to open that with the Windows photo viewer. And here we can see that we have next to each portal, we have a number. Choose type for portal number 1. Number 1 is right here, and that is a door. And I can click this drop down and I can select door. Then I click next, and portal number 2 is a window. So I can select window. Number 3 is another door. Now, instead of, I don't need to specify doors. It might be good to know, because the default when something is not defined is to assume that it is a door. So for all of the doors, I can just click next. Number 4 is over here. That's also doors. We skip that. 5 is our concealed door. And I want to make that a toggleable wall. Then I'm going to click next. That is a window. And here I'm going to type the word window into this field. which is the same as you can see when I did that. It highlights the window when I open the dropdown. You have to use these exact words. These are the options that are available. And if you misspell them, it's going to assume that it's a door instead. Number 7 is also a window. You can also copy and paste into this field if you wish. If you have a lot of windows, you can just paste window into the field. 8 is a door. Where's 9? Right. 9 is the passage down here. So we can just select passage for that. And then number 10 is another window. Then I can click done. That will close that query window. And then I get a second query window. And now I can see that it's made a portals image for the upper floor. So we're going to do the same thing for this one. Pin the window so it remains on top. Then open the portals image. And the upper floor only has 3 portals. We have a door. Number 2 is a door. And then we have our concealed door here. And for that, I'm going to select illusory wall, which is different from a toggleable wall. And now we are done. And we can see that if we have a look in the console, it said emodule.mod, which means that it is done. It outputs the file name of the module file. And if we look in the folder, we can see that it has created a mod file. And we can take that file and in the Fancy Grounds data directory or data folder, there's a modules folder. We're going to copy this module file into here. And then in Fancy Grounds, to open the data folder, you can click this folder icon up here, folder button up here. We're going to load my test campaign, and then we're going to load our module that we have made, and we're going to have a look at the 2 maps that it should contain. There we go. So now we can open the library and open modules. And then we have a module here by Forecaster. We're going to load that. And it appears in the library. We can click that. It only contains images, so we only get an images button. Then we get a list of all of the images when we click that. You can see we have the ground floor and the upper floor. So I'm going to open the ground floor and we're going to make it a little bigger. Then we're going to zoom in, and here we have our map image. We can go into a line of sight to see that we have the walls defined. We have blue doors, yellow windows, and we have our toggleable wall is a dashed blue line. And we can go into lighting, and we can see that we have some lights where they are on the map. The fireplace, lantern, we have a lantern in the lavatory, lantern on the secret door, and we have a candle on the table. We can also see that if we go into here, we have a grid with a width of 70, which is the cell or tile size that I specified in the map. We can choose a tint. As you can see, it's all 0. But if I pull up the alpha, you can see the color is black. That's actually the first number is the alpha value. We can see that it aligns with the map grid, which is nice. We'll leave that like that. If I go back into play mode, I can turn on line of sight and turn on lighting. You can see the map immediately looks a lot nicer with the lighting enabled. And then I can take a player character and put her onto the map. And then I will enable the player vision preview. And the player character is supposed to have a candle, but it seems that I need to turn that off and on again for it to work as it should. So now the player character can see the area that the candle illuminates, but you can also see inside of this building because there's a window here and the interior is lit by the candle and the lantern. It's also casting some light outside through the window, and we can see that there's another window on the opposite wall. We can also see slightly through this window here, but not very much. But I can start wandering about, which will let me see. I can have a look through this window. I can't move through the window because it's closed. But I can see more of the interior now. And we can move around the corner. We can have a look in this building here. See, there's nothing inside really. Then we can open this door, head inside. And you can see here where our hidden passage is, it just looks like a flat wall. And because I am the GM, I can see that there's a hidden door there, but if I were a player, I would not. And the reason you want to do this is the reason you want to use portal refinement is because if we have a look over here, we have a regular door. And as you can see, we can see inside of the rectangle that makes up this door. And it creates an indentation in the void, the unexplored area behind the wall. And you can tell that there is a door here, even if you couldn't see the door itself. So if you imagine that being here, there would be an indentation in the blackness, which would reveal that there is something here. While, as I've defined this door correctly, you can't tell that something is here, which is exactly what we want. Unless I, as the GM, open this door, because the player found it, and now I can see inside and move inside of this hidden room. We're going to close the ground floor, and we're going to open up the upper floor. Have a look at that as well, because we did something different here. We're going to turn on line of sight and lighting. Then we're going to take our player character, start out in the stairs. Now I'm going to enable the player preview, and then I can use the arrow keys to move around if I want to. And I can explore this little shelf room. I can open the door into the storage room. And interestingly, I see some blue glow leak through the wall here, which might be because the wall is just a single line and doesn't have any thickness. But that is a Fantasy Grounds thing. And of course, I can't tell that there is anything here, but I know that as the GM, this wall is illusory. And if I take this player character, I can just move through this wall as if there's nothing there, because the illusory wall only blocks line of sight. It doesn't block movement. And that is pretty much that. We can see that this room is nicely lit in blue, except where the player character's candle is illuminating. Yeah, that's pretty much that. We have now generated a module, which works fine for the most part, at least. Some little light leakage. So I'm going to unload this module, and we are going to go back to the folder and can bring up the application. So this first number is a pair of characters in hex, is the alpha, not the last one like I thought. Probably good to know. So I have deleted all of the extra files in this folder, namely the previous module file. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do the same thing we did before, but using the command line. So the executable can be used in the command line as well, which gives access to some additional options that aren't available in the user interface right now, the graphical interface, I should say. So I opened a command prompt using the Windows terminal program in this folder where the executable is. And if I type the name of the executable, if I pressed enter right now, it would just run the executable. And because it doesn't have any arguments in the command, it will just launch the graphical interface as if I double clicked on the file. But I don't want that. I want to use it in the command line. So I'm going to add the help argument, which is pretty standard, and I'm going to run it with that. And because there is an argument, it's going to run it in command line mode, which means it's not going to start the interface, the graphical interface. It is just going to print the help text into the command prompt. So it says application starting, Fog module generator, and then the version, same as when it runs in graphical interface mode. But then it says arguments present, running in command line mode, run without arguments to run in GUI mode. And then we get some usage information. We get the name of the executable, and then we get a lump of arguments that we can use with it. And you'll notice that most of them are in brackets. And then we have an M and an F that are not in brackets, followed by an F, followed by ellipses within brackets. The brackets mean optional, and no brackets means not optional. If we have a look further down, it says positional arguments, M, the module name, and F, one or more paths to DF2VTT files. Now this is slightly incorrect because one F is one file, not multiple files, and it should be worded differently, I realize now. But the command needs a module name, and it needs at least one file to include in the module. Then we have an F followed by ellipses, which means that we can optionally specify another DF2VTT file. And the ellipses means that we can continue adding more files as new arguments after the first one. And then we have all of the optional arguments, and they are not positional either, which means that the order doesn't matter. And some of them take an argument of their own, like the -a, which takes an author and allows us to set the author similar to the graphical interface. And if we don't include this, it will default to Dungeon Fog. So let's replicate what we did in the graphical interface. So I'm going to press the up arrow to repeat the last command that I executed. And I'm going to just delete the help. Then I'm going to enter a module name. And in the graphical interface, I typed a module. But because this has a space in it, as you can see, if I were to enter this like this, the interpreter would treat this A as the first argument, which would be the module name, and then the space separates arguments, and then module would be treated as the first F. But I don't want this. I want this to be a single argument, so I need to put double quotes around it. And this will make this one argument with the space included in it. And then I'm going to leave a space to separate into another argument. And here I want to have my first file. And in the Windows terminal, and possibly in the regular command prompt as well, I can start typing the name of a file. And then I can press tab, and it will look for a file that starts with LOS, which is what I typed, and it will autocomplete the first matching file. And because the file name also has spaces in it, it will automatically enclose it in double quotes. And if I press tab again, it will look for the next file that matches and autofill in that. And because this is the last matching file, if I press tab again, it's going to go back to the first one. And then I want to do this again. So I'm going to, actually don't need the quote there. I'm going to type LOS, press tab twice to get the upper floor. So now I have the ground floor and the upper floor included. And if we want to repeat what we did in the GUI, I also want to include the -a argument, and I'm going to type after it with a space in between, forecaster. That's me. And this is going to override the default author with forecaster. And it's going to produce a module. So I'm now going to press enter to execute this. And this is going to produce a module that is almost identical to the one we made earlier. So you can see that it prints application starting and the version twice for some reason. Not entirely sure why it does that. Might fix that at some point. But it produced a module called a module. And this will contain our two maps. And let's load this into Fantasy Grounds. So we'll copy this in here. And we are going to overwrite the old module that is in here, called a module. And then we're going to load the campaign. All right. let's go into the library, modules, and then load a module. Check out images. We have ground floor and upper floor like before. But if we open up the ground floor, we'll see that there's one difference between this and the module we made earlier. If I go into the line of sight tab, you'll see that all of the portals are blue. They're all doors, even the windows and our concealed door here. The reason for that is because we didn't run the portal refinement this time. So the module generator just had to assume that all the portals are doors because we didn't tell it more specifically what each one is. This does, however, allow me to demonstrate what a concealed door looks like. So let's turn on line of sight. We don't really need lighting right now. And then we're going to turn on the player preview. And we can move around like before, but you'll notice that the windows aren't transparent now. I would have to open them for them to be transparent, which also means I can move through them. And you'll notice, if we look over here, that there's a weird shape here where the concealed door is. Even though it's just a wall, we have this cut-in caused by the door shape. And we can clearly see that there's a door there, even though we're not supposed to. So, and that's why you want to specify those. So, what do we do to fix this? Well, obviously we want to run the portal refinement mode. And to do that, we need to include the -p argument. Whether to refine portals, parentheses, doors, and parentheses, and define types. And the rest we don't need to worry about if we are using the executable. That only applies if you're using the raw, or you only need to worry about that if you're using the raw Python script, because the executable includes all of the libraries that are needed. So if I want to run portal refinement, I'm going to again press the up arrow to bring back the last command that I executed. And then I'm just going to type -p to enable portal refinement. Then when I press enter, instead of running through the entire process and generating a module, it is going to go into portal refinement mode, similar to the GUI, except I don't get a window popping up with which I can use. I have to do it in the command line. So it reads very similarly, though. It says a total of 10 portals were found. These have been numbered in the file los test ground floor _ portals.png in the working directory. Open this file and specify the desired type for each portal, choosing from the following. And then it gives us a list of all of the options, the same ones that were in the GUI, in the dropdown. And it gives us a bit of an explanation of each as well, which is the same as in the GUI as well. However, we have something different here. We have a 1+ and R. So R allows you to step back if you make a mistake or change your mind. You can step back through the list of portals. Currently we are on portal number 1, so we can't go back any more than that. And +1, as it says, you can enter a choice, so 1 through 5, followed by a plus. For example, +2 or 2+. To set all remaining portals to that type. Now, if we go back to the folder, you can see that we have a ground floor underscore portals, just like before. And we can open that. And it looks exactly the same as it did before. So I can shrink this up. We'll pin this on top. So portal number 1 is a door. Portal number 2 is a window, which is number 2. And portal number 3 is a door. Portal number 4, that should be a door. And then portal number 5 is our concealed door. So I want that to be a toggleable wall again. So I'm specifying type 4. And then number 6 and 7 are windows. So 2, 2. Number 8 is a door. Number 9 is a passage. So 3. And 10 should be a window. Now, let's say that I had more portals after 10, and all of them are windows. I would then type 2 plus, and this would stop asking for all the remaining portals and just assume that they are windows instead of doors. Then it does something different. As you can see, it says if you need to generate this module again with the same portals, you can paste this key into the portal 1 prompt. And then it says portal list, and then a semicolon. Then it says door, window, door, door, toggleable wall, window, window, door, passage, window. So if I wanted to, I could copy this, and then I would now press Control-C, and I now have this in my clipboard. And I could save this somewhere. And if now it's asking about the second floor, the upper floor. It's the same thing. And I don't even need to open that image because I know that 1 and 2 were doors. And number 3 was our illusory wall. And then you can see it gives us a similar key, but a lot shorter for the second floor. And I could save that as well. And when it asks me to specify the type of portal number 1, if I paste this key into the prompt and press enter, it's going to use this key to fill in all of the doors. And you don't actually need this specific, you don't need to wait for the generator to generate this key for you. You could type this in manually, and you would have to use the same choices that you have that are listed here, which are the same ones that are in the drop-down in the graphical interface. But you could type this key out manually. It has to start with portal list, and it has to be separated by semicolons. But other than that, instead of specifying a 1 for portal 1 and a 2 for portal 2 and then a 1 for portal 3, I could just type portal list semicolon door window door, and then do the same thing for the rest of the numbers. And then just submit them all in one go, if I preferred. So both of those are available. The advantage of this, of course, is that you get a key made from your specification, and then if you need to do this again, I can just take these 2 keys and I can paste them in, and the portal refinement would be a lot quicker. then you can see that it again generated the module. So I can unpin this window. And then if we go copy this into the Fantasy Grounds module folder again, overwrite, and then I'm going to reload the campaign. And then we go into library. Once again, and we're going to load this module, revert changes just in case. And then if we go open up the ground floor again and go into line of sight, we can now see that we have our more refined portals back. We have our windows, we have our passage, which is just a gap, and we have our concealed toggleable wall. So that is pretty much that. I will also show what the another simple option I mentioned earlier, I believe, which is the extraction mode, for which I don't need the author because this isn't going to generate a module. I do still need to specify a module name because the argument is required. But if I specify -x and then press enter, it is not going to generate a module. Instead, it is simply going to extract the images that are embedded in the export files and place them in the working directory and then just stop. So it's not going to do anything else. It's not going to do anything to the images. It's just going to save them. I should open this with the photo viewer. And there we go. So this is just the image as it is in the export file. Now it doesn't have any lighting effects on it because the embedded image, if you have native lights turned on, when you export it, the image will not have any light effects on it. Because it counts on the VTT to handle that. But it is a way to get the map image out. Maybe you accidentally deleted the map in Dungeon Fog, and you have no way of getting it back. And then you could extract the image from an export file you have and then import it as a blueprint to recreate it. It might also be useful for something else that I haven't thought of. It's always possible. But that concludes chapter 1. So let's move on to chapter 2. The online edition of the generator runs on the same scripts underneath, but it is much more limited because of the interface, which doesn't provide access to most of the options, at least not right now. This might change in the future, but currently it is very limited. As you can see, it lets you specify the module name. We're going to do that. We're going to enter in a module like before. We're going to set the author to Forecaster. And we're going to choose the files, upper floor and ground floor. And We could turn off lighting and walls and doors if we wanted to. I'm not going to do that though. And then I just click submit. And assuming all goes well, we don't see any warnings in the output or errors. And it says success. And then it provides a download link to the module. So I just click on the download link. And then I can save the module file. And then I could copy that into the Fantasy Grounds module folder and load it up. And we would get the same result as when we ran it through the command line without the portal refinement enabled. So it would include all the doors, it would include the lights, but all the doors would be doors, and we wouldn't have any windows or hidden doors or anything like that. But as you can see, it's pretty simple to use. It doesn't take any setup. It does require uploading the map files to my server, however, which is something worth noting. And currently the download link remains available indefinitely, but that might change in the future, in which case it will say on the website. Currently it says that actually I might not say that anymore, which is correct, but if there is a time limit on downloading, it will say that in this online generator section in the future. And that's pretty much it for the online edition. So let's move on to the next chapter. All right, so for the final chapter, we are going to have a look at the raw Python scripts and how to use them. It is fairly simple, assuming that you have the Python interpreter installed on your system, and how to get that might vary. For Windows 10 and up, you can get it from the Windows App Store, install it from there, and it should be available through the command line. So we have our DF2VTT folder with the executable in it. So we're going to go to the GitHub repository for the project, and we're going to go to the front page where the code is, and we're going to download the Python scripts from here. And if we do it from here, we'll get the latest versions of them. And the files we need are the DF2VTT parser, the FG module library, and the utilib library. We can also get the parser GUI file if we want to be able to run the GUI via the Python interpreter. And these files are what is inside of the executable, essentially, along with a copy of the Python interpreter and some additional libraries. So we're going to open the first file, and then we have a button up here that says raw. And this goes to the raw file. We can see the contents of the file in this box here, but we want the file, we can't just save this page because we would get a load of HTML code as well. So we want to right click on this raw button and then save link as. and we're going to go to the folder, and I'm going to save this first script right there. Then I can close this. I'm going to open the FG module. You get the GUI file as well, and the utilib file. We're going to do the exact same thing with each of these. I'm going to right click on raw and save, and it's already adding the .py extension because these are Python scripts. And we'll get the GUI file as well. And the final utility library that I have written with a bunch of math functions in it. And once we have all of these, we can open up a command prompt in this folder. Just like when we were running the executable through the command line. But here we can't just type the name of a script. I can try that. Enter the DF2VTT parser. So I flashed up a separate window, but it didn't really do anything. Instead, what I want to do is type Python first, and then point it towards the script. And the DF2VTT parser script is the primary script. The FG module and the utilib files are libraries that are used by the parser. The FG module library contains functions for generating the occluders and other objects for fancy grounds, which I have written. So if I run the script like this, you can see that it prints the usage information, and then it says error, the following arguments are required, M and F. So it's the same as running the executable in the command line. I can add --help or --H to print the help, the full help. And as you can see, it's slightly faster. There's a delay. There was a delay when we ran it via the executable, but the Python script is a bit faster because it doesn't have to load things from the executable. It's using things that are already installed on my system and not baked into a file, which makes it a lot faster. So that's one of the advantages of using the raw scripts. One of the drawbacks is that you need some libraries installed. For example, the Pillow library, or PIL, which is used to draw things on images, like text and shapes, and some other ones that it may complain about missing if you try to run or use certain functions. And those are included in the executable. But if you are just downloading the scripts, those external third-party libraries are not included. So you need to have them installed to your system. And the way to do that is with the pip program, which is part of the Python suite. And for example, you would go pip install pill. Pillow, maybe. Yeah, pillow in this case. It's referred to as pill in the code due to legacy reasons. Now it says requirement already satisfied because I already have this library installed. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as using the executable through the command line. We get access to the exact same options because when you run the executable, it is running the parser GUI file, which we can also run through the Python interpreter here. So instead of telling it to run the DF2VTT parser file, we can tell it to run the parser GUI file. And here you can see it says application starting, no arguments present, running in GUI mode. So this starts the graphical user interface similar to starting the executable, because what the executable does is basically this. It runs the parser GUI file, which causes this window to pop up. The output will be in this terminal window we already have. When you use the executable, it starts a terminal window for you. But the actual command line operations, this parser GUI file is just a wrapper for the graphical interface. The actual parser is this file here, which is why you run this. You can run this and pass it arguments to use the command line mode. You can also do that with the parser GUI file, because as you can see, it says no arguments present, running in GUI mode. But if I pass this the help argument, this will do the same thing, but it is just passing the arguments through to the parser when it's given them. And if the parser GUI is not given any arguments, it starts the graphical interface. And that's pretty much it. Aside from having the correct libraries installed, this is certainly a viable way to run the application, even if you just want to use the graphical user interface. So there's not much more to go through. If you want to know more, if you skip through the video and ended up here, you can go back to chapter 1.2 to see how to use the command line to use the module generator. And that is going to be the end of this video. So I will see you in the next one.